it says in the Parshas Terumah, V'yikrali Terumah. Now, is Terumah in Loshen Dafke for Kedusha or not? So we see, more or less it is. There may be an actual translation of separation or something of that sort, to Afchoshe, but in reality it goes only to Kochim. And there's a Gemara, it may sound a strange Gemara. I got it obviously, that a min, I think it was Rabbi Abu, and said to him, your God's a Kohen. Why? Because it says, V'yikrali Terumah. And he became Tomei to Moshe Rabbeinu, right? So now he became Tomei. So Kohen becomes Tomei, has to become Toher. So he says, so how do you become Toher? If you're going to tie it with water, it's not Shaykh, because the water doesn't only come up to a little bit of the Rebbeinu Shlit, whatever that means in English. And so he said with fire, because the only time that you have to put in water is something that can't go into fire. So the Rebbeinu Shlit went into fire and he became Torah. Okay, that's strange. Well, but you see here that one thing that you see from that Loshen, I think that it was trying to say, how do you know first of all the Rebbeinu was a Kohen? Maybe if he's asking you just to be perished for him stuff. And what he's telling to Kohanim, whatever they give to me, I'm giving to you. And that I'm giving an Yisrael of Azor, so they're not allowed to eat it. So I think the logic of that would be that if the Azor can't eat it once it's given to them, so surely if it was the Rebbeinu Shalom's itself to start with, the surely Azor can't eat it. So the Mela, there must be the Rebbeinu Shalom's a Kohen. Okay, I'm just trying to explain how Gemara, it sounds a little silly, but to understand it, that they bothered to answer the minim with such stories. Okay. There are it says over here, V'yikrali Terumah, and he tells you what he wants, all these items, and he doesn't tell him what he wants to do it for until after he finishes enumerating what he wants. He says, what do you want to do with all this stuff? But the idea is, he didn't say, normally make an appeal. You first try to tell the people what you want to do with the money. And then you ask them for the money. Now, I want to build this, I want to do this, and now I need your support, so please help me out. But over here, it seems the Rebbeinu is going the other way. He says, first of all, you give me what you owe me, or what's mine. And now we'll worry about what to do with it. That's my business, what I want to do with it. And the reason is because the Rebbeinu wanted to show who's the Balabas. That he is in truth, he's in charge of everything, he's in charge of the whole world. It's not so it's his. And therefore he's a nice person, he's willing to share it with Klal Yisrael for a purpose for Klal Yisrael. But in Emerson, it's God's, what he wants. And therefore it could be, if we really learn about it, it would be that the Mishkan is really totally God's, as opposed, let's say, to the Beis HaMikdash. Where the Beis HaMikdash was Eitzim Avonim, supported by money that was taka collected maybe for Kedusha, but it was not necessarily God's. It wasn't say V'yikrali Terumah, take it for me. I want it, it's mine, and therefore the Mishkan is mine. And the mine means that the Mishkan doesn't get destroyed. And whatever it is, the Kedusha, I don't know if we all understand what actually the Mishkan was or wasn't. I don't personally. And to understand how it gives over the Mokim that the Beis Shalom is be able to, the Shekhinah is be able to rest for Klal Yisrael on the Mishkan, that it had all these parts that are seeming to be a very, like you said, it wasn't a permanent building, it was the same, and yet that was the Ikel that the Rebbeinu Shalom made. And I say, I can't answer that, I don't know, but that's something to think about. One of the Terumahs, the Rashi brings down that the Torah, when he says V'yikli Terumah, he said there are three Terumahs that the Torah is considering here. One is the Matzah Shekel, plain, the Matzah, that's for Karbonis, the Matzah Shekel for the Adonim, and Kol Nediv Leiv, everyone that wants to give what he wants to give. Shaila is, the Adonim were made up, and only the Adonim were made up of a Matzah Shekel that every Jew donated. So every Jew had a chelik in the Adonim. They don't necessarily have a chelik in anything else, like for instance the Nesiim, who did not donate to the Mishkan itself, they gave it to the Big Day Kahuna. And the reason they didn't donate to the Mishkan itself, we'll probably talk about it again, is because they gave most of us, some of us that deal with yeshivas or the different or tzedakah dik inyanim, and you would love everybody that deals with these things would love a donor that would say, look, you go out and raise whatever you can, and at the end of the day, what you don't make, here's a blank check, you write out what you need in the blank check. I don't think there's anybody that would turn down a deal like that. It's a merik deal. And yet the Rabbeinu Shalom somehow was not very convinced about this. He was not interested in somebody telling me what he's going to do if I'm a failure. What I want to do is to help me right up in the beginning. Come out, put your money forth right where it counts. Then if I'm missing also, then you come along and you support me again. But the difference was because they lost out on participating in the Mishkan except for by the Adonim. And the reason they lost out is because Klal Yisrael filled up the need. There was no need for them to give anymore. There was no need for a blank check. And therefore they lost out on that. Therefore, whatever we'll talk about when the time comes.
Is there a strict time on them also that they underestimated what Klal Yisrael was going to do?
Could be. In other words, they didn't think the Jews were that convinced to do Mishkan, and therefore for that they get a punishment. I don't know. In other words, the guy who gives a blank check, it would be a tiny on him if he gives it to start with. I think right now, as Bana say, you give a blank check, make the guy feel good. He shouldn't worry, not because of any other reasons. But probably the correct way to do it is to let Klal Yisrael do, and probably I have hope that they will do, and that they can do, and then if they can't do it, it won't happen, and then I come step in. But I have to participate. That's the main thing. Now, the Adonim are the supporters of the basic of the what do you call it, of the Kroshim, which supported the Mishkan and all the other things. Because the Taich of the Mishkan means the as Esei, which became the ceiling of the Mishkan. On top of that, you had Hizim and then Troshim. And you had those was that the cover and then a roof, and that was like three layers that you had on the Mishkan. The Mishkan is called according to its inner layer, which was the ceiling. And I think the reason for it is the reason why we had to be the Adonim, everybody equal. Shiva says this has to do with chinuch, of course. That every child in Klal Yisrael is entitled to the same education, to the same foundation as everybody else. And that's why we all have to participate equally in there. We can't say, I'm there and nobody else is there. So we're all partners in there, and we all have to make sure that that's what happens. When that happens, we say, a lot of the places develop, and other places don't develop. And you ever think about it, why? Why is it that, the Yeshiva A, all of a sudden having kids learn so much and so much, and Yeshiva B, they're just like barely starting. But I mean, both the people are dedicated and both care, and they're both involved. So then why is one more successful in it than the other one? And I think the answer is simply in what the goal is. And you'll find we'll go talk about it in Parshas Pikudei, that when they put up the Mishkan, the first thing that went up was the ceiling. And not the boards, they didn't hold, it's not the support system, the ceiling. Because it's important that when you start in Torah or Yer Shemayim or in trying to have a mokum for God, you aim for the top. That's where we're going. And then to get there, we have to have Adonim, we have to have a ground system, in other words, where we start off. And then we have Karoshim, which will be the actual support, which is given according to each person. Someone can give more, someone can give less. Each one is according to his ability, and they will reach the Mishkan. Either the pshat is that they go as far as they can, or pshat is that's called reaching the Mishkan, because each one goes according to his ability, according to the keiches that God gave him. And therefore that's called reaching the Mishkan, and therefore we all can reach the Mishkan after we have a full the Adonim, after we have that support. Now you have the Maisa. The first thing he tells them to build is an oven. And the oven is made out of the actual. I once had an answer for it. I don't have an answer. When everyone went in yeshiva, the Rebbe always used to tell the Chochmah that Rashi tells that it was really 3 containers that were made: an inside one, an outside one, and the wooden one. And that was the way they plated it. What difference does it make to me how they plated it? You don't find that by the kroshim they plated it in any special way, or what is the thing there. So it's the only one that had a container, so therefore they made it this way. But the far is, if you wouldn't have made it this way, they just would have poured the lead down, they would have put the gold down, and it would have covered it like any other thing that's coated in gold. So I don't know exactly, but I had an answer for it once. But everything, all the gold that's used here is not 14 karat, not 18 karat, but it's 24 karat. That means pure gold. Gold is a very malleable material. You can squeeze it with your fingers. They say that from 1 ounce of gold you can get a mile of wire. The gold thread will last can go for a mile. 1 ounce. It's a little piece like this, and it goes that long. All the jewelries, when gold was was cheap, gold, you'll feel some of your wife's jewelry heavier than other times. Now you'll touch the jewelry, they're very light, but yet they look the same, because it's malleable. You can stretch it very, very thin. Okay, but it's not very, very strong, because I said you can squeeze it with your fingers. Okay, so what they made, they covered. You're right. The Aram was covered with the gold, with this gold, but that didn't make a difference. If it was not. Maybe you had to watch it. Didn't look like was a lot of nicks in it. That I can't tell you, but. The biggest mess was, I think, you put tabois, which means little hooks. That was a little bigger than a little one, because it was formed big enough to open up that someone can stand underneath it. And when it closes into the oven, it keeps the bottom lower into it. In other words, the bottom don't stick out all the time. So they can be lowered and lifted, but they're not allowed to leave the oven. The badim must always stay in the oven. And the thing there, whether the carrying of Torah means, whether it's a symbolization, that always has to be in place. It always has to be ready to move. And we've gone with the Golis and all over the world, and we've rebuilt these shivas and rebuilt everything that went with us, no matter where we were in the world. And that's what the badim are supposed to show. And the badim can never leave it, because then you're saying the Urim belongs over there, and that means the Torah belongs there. And if it's not there, well, what can we do? It's a tragedy, but we can't do anything about it. No, the Urim has badim. The badim never leave them. We can always take it to some other place also. And that's the point of the badim. But the finesse is that the badim were able to support the Urim. The badim are pure gold. So the whatever weight there is in the Urim, and we'll talk about it in a second, the chayri should stretch the gold over the badim. It should always lay on the floor. The tabois, in the tabois, yeah. I'm sorry, I said the badim. Yeah, the tabois. But they would keep spreading, and then the Urim would always be laying on the floor, because you never can lift it up. And you want to know how much weight there was in the Urim. So we have the Urim itself, which I don't know how much it weighed. I don't assume it weighed too much. It was a nice sized box, but it didn't weigh too much. It was awkward maybe, but not way too much for one person. The kapiris that they made, which is the next thing, and top, that's the cover of the Urim, which had the kruvim. So the size was 2.5 amas one way, and 1.5 amas the other way. A tefach thick, right? Pure gold. And I assume it meant pressed down the gold. Right? It doesn't mean like a very fluffy gold. I mean, it was pressed down. That weighs approximately 5,000 pounds. The luchos, which were made of sapphire, the size, cubes, 2 cubes, a question of 2 half cubes, but 2 cubes of an amalama approximately weighs again another 5,000 pounds. So total is about 10,000 pounds. And you're going to put 4 people who are trying to lift this up, and somehow it doesn't really go. I don't know what to tell you, but obviously it was a ness. And not only that, but it says noiseis noisov. The Urim carried the ones who carried it. According to the way you just described it to me, that people can't possibly be carrying it. It just took off like flying, and whatever else held on to it, and you go. Now, I think what it means is that the people have to at least attempt to lift it. And as they're lifting it, it lifts itself. So in other words, they are lifters, but they didn't accomplish it. The lifting is from the Urim itself. And, yeah. So that's an idea to understand the actually what we're dealing with here as far as the weight. Then the Feinstein made the shulchan. The shulchan, then it's when he finishes off the shulchan, he gives the size and what you have to do it, and it says he made everything in. There should always be lechem panim on the table. Now, what does it mean by that? Telling me what the avodah of the table is, or you're telling me that the table is not complete unless it has the lechem panim on it? I would think it's the second way, because the din is you're never allowed to leave when you say tomid, you mean literally tomid. And when they replaced the lechem aponim every Friday, they would push it down. I mean, every Shabbos, when they replaced them, every Shabbos, they would push it down. They wouldn't take, as they're taking this one off, this one's coming on. And that means that there was never a time without the lechem aponim on it. So the most logic is that the shulchan is not a shulchan unless it has lechem aponim on it. It's more in the later on in Parshas, probably Vayakil, probably it's more mashma that way. We'll talk about it again then maybe, because it's an important inyan, that they understand what's required of us and what's required from Hashem. It's interesting. We'll talk a little bit now. You have a listing in the 15 things that the Rebbeinu wanted donated to the Mishkan. You talk about the Shemin HaMishcha, the Psamim for the Keteris HaSamim. You talk about the oil for the Menorah. But you don't ask for a donation of flour. The Chayri should have a donation of flour. Where are they going to get it in the Midbar? Right? So they should have had, that's one thing. People have flour, they donate it to the Mishkan. No. And I think this is what the lesson is supposed to be for us. That I require you, first of all, we know the shulchan is for money. But it doesn't mean the money for us to waste and stuff like that. We're talking the money that you need for Kedusha, for the Yored, for all to build the Mishkan. That's what we're talking about. We need the money that it takes to build a Mishkan. Support Torah, build Torah. That's what the money is going to be used for. So, if the Rebbeinu Shalom would leave it up to us, right, that we have to supply all the support that it takes to make a Mishkan, make a Torah, make a yeshiva, make everything else, depends on our financial situation. If we're in America, Baruch Hashem, there's a lot. And if you were in other places in the world, there weren't that many people. There's not that much money. And therefore, how are you going to build it? So the Rebbeinu Shem tells you, you do what you can do. The rest of it is up to me. So where you had to give the jewels and the gold and the this and that, then you have to give the jewels and the gold and whatever it is. But where you have to continue something that resembles Torah, in other words, the rebuilding of Torah, the Lechem HaPonim, which is the ashirus of supporting Torah, you do what you can. And therefore, you can't donate the flour now. You have to be able to buy the flour with the money that's given for the money for the Mishkan. That money, whatever it takes, that's the money you're giving. So you're going to buy it now. And let's say it doesn't pay. It can't afford to buy what we need. That's the Rebbeinu Shem's business. It will always be enough. But if it's up to me, then I can't do it. That's what Rebbeinu Shem left this open for him. The Menorah is an interesting thing. It tells you about the design of the Menorah. It has to have kafterim, geviyim, prochim. But yet this requirement is only if the Menorah is made out of gold. And I think this is Pshat in the Gemara in Menachos that says that when the Chashmonoim recaptured the Beis Hamikdash, they had a Menorah built out of wood or stone. They got richer, they built it out of metal. They got richer, they built it out of silver. They got richer, they built it out of gold, and then it required all the measurements, all these designs and stuff like that. Before then, the other three method did not require it. So I learned pshat like this. It doesn't mean I became richer in financial business, because when even though they may have been poor, the Greeks may have robbed them of everything they had, but after the Hashmonaim defeated the Greeks, I think the first battle they killed over 100,000 Greeks. So 100,000 Greeks had spears and swords and things of that sort. To build one menorah, I don't think it was a big deal. If you melt down the stuff, it doesn't say any requirement they can't be used for building a menorah. So they definitely had a menorah. So why tell me they got rich and first were able to afford it? What I think it means is the riches in the chshivas ha-Torah, how they respected Torah in their time. Now there were times, and I've been through this, and I've seen people like this, and there may even still be people around like that I can't answer you. But they treat the Torah, and they believe they're from a Yidden, and they believe in the Torah 100%. But the Torah is a tool to live my life. And I got a shaila, and I come to the Rav, and I asked the Rav, this and this happened, what do I do? So the rabbi starts to explain to him, well, the Gemara says this and this thing, and this and that, Rabbi, please don't mix me up with all the facts. Just tell me it's mutar or the osa. That's all I'm interested in. And so it's a tool, but it's like a tool of wood. You can't make it into precision instrument. It's going to be a club, be a heavy globazach. That's it. They got richer and they held the chshivas ha-Torah. They held of it. Baruch Hashem Torah, we learned it even and stuff like that. We have chavuras and things. Things are going wonderful. And we like to have the understanding, and we want to have that exact understanding, just like the precision of a pin or something like that. Like you can give it so exact. They have that's what we want. But to go into the business of teaching a rabbanus, that's not a job for a good Jewish boy. That doesn't pay. There's not enough covet in it. There's not a job for a good Jewish boy. They got richer, and now all of a sudden it became a parnosa, silver. It's a parnosa, it's money. But not a very good one. But it's not bad. So you can make a living. You can live. We'll call you dedicated. We'll make nice things about you. But so it has a covet. They got richer, and I think to a certain extent it's even in our time. Everybody wants to have it. It's gold. Gold has no use except to own it. Silver, all other platinum, these metals all have usage. You want to build airplanes, you want to build things of that sort, you need those type of metals. Gold is not necessary. Gold is only for beauty. But everybody wants that beauty. Everybody wants it. When gold is owned by everybody, that's when you have to have a form, and to know that the Torah is this way. It doesn't deviate this way or this way. It doesn't go only according to how much Torah you have. This is the way the Torah is. And it has to have all these forms, and it doesn't move. It's only when it's gold. Till then, it's not important how much it is, because it's more important to get the guy to learn and to get the guy to be from than to see exactly how from you are. So in a way, there's, it tells you if you want your son to be, the menorah was in the south, and the shulchan was in the north. Whatever that means, that was a little wrong, but to that side of the Mishkan. And it tells you, when you daven Shemini Esrei, we daven east. But if you want your son, your child to be, to be a Talmud Chacham and everything else, you daven southeast. Now it's east facing south. If you want your son to become rich, you go face east, northeast. We just saw it now. We're not talking about rich for yourself. We're talking about rich to do stockage, to build Torah, to do many, many things. Why are we talking about north or south? It's the same thing, all interest in Torah. Okay, I think it goes what basic job you want. You want to be from the learners, the teachers, we all teachers, I don't mean that part, from the learners or the supporters. And in supporters, I just want to tell you, that a description for Rabbi Lipkovsky, used to be our executive director. Very nice pshat on this. Supporters really go into two definitions. You have, what do you call it? Temchem Musha, that's the beginning of the pasuk. Temchem Musha. Huh? I don't hear you. Eitz Chaim Hilam Achzikim Bo, but Temchem Musha. So you can translate it this way. What's the difference? They're both supporters, both help. What do I mean? Help. Eitz Chaim, what was the last name?
Eitz Chaim Hilam
Achzikim Bo. Let's say he's drowning, and you throw him a life raft. So he holds on to that life raft with all his keiches, right? So in other words, the ones who hold on to it, they're not going to make sure they don't leave go of it. That's the Eitz Chaim Hilam Achzikim Bo. That's one type of supporter. And then there's a type of supporter called B'Temchem Musha. They support you, and they're very great and wonderful. And what does that mean? Person's carrying a heavy load, and somebody sees you carrying a heavy load, and he goes over and he says, "Can I help you?" He said, "Yeah, I'm going that way, and I'm very thankful to help." So the guy takes half of my weight, and he's carrying with me and everything else. He walks a block, maybe 2 blocks, and then he says, "Well, I'm turning off over here. Here's your package back." That's Temchecha. As long as it's easy for me, I do it. When I'm not convenient, I don't do it. But what do you call the ones that it's Chaim Hi, that's my life. Then you don't leave go of it. So it's very interesting uptight, and I think people have to just look at themselves in that way, where they fit in. But the mitzvah between Stokke and Teire, you don't really get much hanoia from being a rich person over a Talmud Chacham. What do I mean? A Talmud Chacham is supposed to spend all his time learning, steiging, or to getting money to support that steiging and that learning. But basically, that's my job. And then there's a guy who is the supporter of all things. He's a big Baltstocker, gives to the individuals, he gives to the institutions, and he also really has to work 24 hours a day. He doesn't have any time to relax either. There used to be people in Williamsburg, really, and I think there's still one now. I don't want to get into names, But every Shabbos night, about 200-300 people line up in front of his house, and he sits there and writes out checks. Now, I can go out and maybe have a good time Shabbos night, go someplace, Malava Malke. He sits there and he gives out checks. Now, to write checks, and I can tell you I have to write sometimes for the awards here, sometimes like as much as 50 in a row. My hand hurts. You're talking about a guy having to write out 200 checks in one night? His hand's going to hurt. And yet he does it. Comes Purim time, there's others that are going to be involved with their family and everything else. And this year specifically because there's not going to be any great gatherings, and I understand most of the collections of yeshiva guys have been canceled. So it's not a healthy answer, but you have to let yourself be found. That, in other words, people are going to be looking for you, the poor people. The ones that are there every year and every day, those people will have to find you, have to be able to find you, and that's the important part. So therefore, there's no difference between this work and this work. If you want to be the Talmud Chacham or about stock, it doesn't really give you too much time for yourself. But Lamaisa, both of them gets to the right place. And it says, right? Yeah. Okay. Now, this, I think we spoke about this a little when we had the Bishalach, right? And we'll do it again, because it's coming up to Purim. This is Shabbos, Parshas Zocha. Purim is on Friday. And it's slippery weather tomorrow. So I'm sure that a lot of people won't make it. Now, you'll say, who won't make it? The guy who has to go to shul, but the guest with Mesilas Nefesh is going to make it. But sometimes it's not possible. There's a lot of ice now on the street. I hope they'll be able to clean it up before Shabbos. But it's going to be difficult to come. So there is a shita that says you can be Yetzer with the Kriya on Purim, which is Vayaveh Amalek. And it goes over there also into the Parsha of Zocher, what do you call, what's also, what we have a din of Ksev Zes Basefer, and he told it to Yeshua, and give yours to Yeshua, there's a lotion, and Vayom Shal Moshe Ksev Zes Basefer, B'sin yours to Yeshua, Ki Mochi Echazech Amalek, Midaros Shemayim. Somehow it doesn't even say the same words, really. Here it says, first of all, it says, Zocher is Hashem Amalek. You don't have that word over there. And then it says, Lo Tishkach. Over here, neither word is around in that. It does says, we should destroy the Zecher Amalek. But it doesn't say the word that we have a din of Shabbos Zocher, that we have to remember it. But the thing is, the reason why it's different in period is that here it says in Vishalach Menach, it says Shayv Zaysikom Basefer V'Simbaz Ne Yeshua. Why? Ki Mocha Emche Zech Amalek. I will destroy Amalek. I don't need any help from you Jews. The Rebbeinu Shalom is doing the whole work of destroying Amalek. Now, it may be that how is he going to do it? Is he going to call on the Jews to do it for him? Now, Shaul HaMelech, David HaMelech, there'll be a Mashiach time if they're still around. They'll probably, I don't know if they will or will not be around. And it says, Moshe built the Mizbeach, V'ikra Shema Hashem Nisi, Vayemek Yod al Kes Koh, Nishchom ala Hashem ba'amalek b'dor. God is fighting Amalek every generation. It doesn't say anything about us in this whole parsha. So if it's anything that we have to do, it's not here. So we're not going to be Yetzer anything with this. But let's see, understand now what it says in Parshas Zochar. Zochar is Asher Sulcha Amalek Baderech. Remember what Amalek did to you on the road. Why? It says when you came out of Mitzrayim, Shekocha Baderech, you were cooled off. You were tired, and there was weak ones among you that were outside of the thing. You still weren't fearful of God. So therefore, what did Amalek do to you? It came to you and presented you with new ideas. Not ideas that necessarily make sense, but new ideas. I'm not getting involved in the science of things or whatever it is. But I remember that we used to have teachers, and the teachers were mostly Freie Yidden, in the English department, and sometimes were Goyim even. And they would make fun of a lot of things that the Torah said. At the same time, I guess I don't think how to put it. I'll tell you how they made fun of the alchemists. That's one of the things that it also says in the Gemara. There are basically 4 elements. What do you call it? And the alchemists made fun of it. I mean, that's what the alchemists believed, and therefore they always were trying to turn lead into gold. I think that's 1 neutron off, one atom off. I don't know which one we're counting there, but it's 1 off. And therefore they thought if they can attack the lead to such a way that would lose that 1, it would turn into gold. And they made fun of that. Okay. Because we have so many 100 and something, elements and stuff like that. And they claim to be 4. Now, we got to understand that they weren't stupid in realizing that all liquids are the same. They knew there was water. They knew there was acid. They knew there was lye. They knew there was dangerous liquids and there were safe liquids. Yet they say liquid is an element. You have earth. This is a soft earth. This is a hard earth. This is a different thing. Yet they're all earth. There's the irons in certain, there's different ores, there's different, whatever it is there. They knew that everything was different. Air. They knew there was oxygen that we can breathe, and they knew we can die by carbon dioxide. And it's also, all it is air. So what does it mean that they believed in 4 elements? So obviously they believe that the elements, there's something more basic than what we hold. And in a way, I guess you'll say it all comes down to hydrogen because that's the lowest one, but they call the atomic elements. And when they use the atomic elements, they go from one to the other. And you can actually watch starting at the beginning and how lead becomes gold and goes down and down. But you can't stop it and say, oh, well, now stop it. Doesn't work that way. But the idea is, you see that it's true. It keeps the same item, keeps changing, because you're knocking off your atoms. Because of that, they change. So the same thing goes when you don't really understand, you make fun. So make fun of the Torah. So they eingehabt in Darwin's theory. And remember, the word theory means it's only a theory. It's a svara. They don't really know. But there happens to be questions on this theory. Question number one is, where the first cell come from? Okay. Question number two, they have no answer for the grasses. For the animals they have, but not for the plant kingdom. Why? Because they're the same as they were. There's no stronger or weaker that defeats anybody because of it, and that's what doesn't have. So they don't have an answer. But if you yell loud enough, you're going to be heard and people may believe you. There's a joke about this Galach that was making his sermon, and he had at one point a thing they yell, logic weak. Because that's what you do. If you scream, people don't think too hard into the logic behind it. I think the basic thing that we have to teach our kids, because the ones that do get caught up in this type of questions that they may have by teachers or something, is to make them realize that a maimin has no questions and a kaifer has no answers. And once you realize that, then there's no reason why a person would want to become a kaifer. It automatically is logical that this is the emes, and therefore they would go along with the emes. Anyway, Amalek was the ones that instilled this kfirah into the world. And the Gemara gives a mashal on this too. Somebody jumps into a hot bath and he burns himself. But he cooled it off for others, because others will now attempt it. They say, you call it copycat, whatever you want to call it, copycats. So you have, in the public schools, yesterday I heard of it, that the most suicides in a year, and we're not even finished with about a half a year, they have more suicides than last year. Why? Kids, we're talking about kids in school. Whatever, you're going to give them an excuse for it, but now that they're waking up for it, these are things because there are questions, and once one kid does it, another kid will attempt to do it also. It's going to kill you. It doesn't make a difference. I'm going to do it. The same thing with all what the guys are shooting, the mass shootings and so on. Again, one guy did it, and then everybody else follows. I'm going to be right. I'm going to do it better. Whatever they're trying to do, I'm going to be noted, and that's the important thing. That we have to stop such a copycat thing, and that's what happened with Amalek. Amalek got killed. They were kfirah, and they got killed. But even though they got killed, it was cooled off the rest of the people, the rest of the world, that they can also claim the same theories that Amalek claimed. So therefore, when we say Zochaz Hashos L'cho Amalek, Amalek weakened us, even though we're Maiminim, and we believe, and we truly believe. But there are times of weaknesses. Things don't go so well at certain times. Do we still say Kol Di'avodah Hamana Tavavid? Do we still say Gamzul Taiva? Now, by the way, at this point, I want to tell you a difference between the two and how a person has to react. Gamzu l'toiven, according to the Nahar, is talking about Nochemish Gamzu, that was once sent by Klal Yisrael to try to get a decree of the Roman Emperor, what he called it, eradicated, because it was anti-Jewish. He came with a box of jewels. It happens to be stopped off at an inn, and the owner of the inn stole the jewels and filled up the box with sand. I guess the weight was approximately the same. Nochemish Gamzu doesn't bother checking it because it's not necessary. He's a tzaddik gomer. He knows he's a tzaddik gomer, and therefore he's not afraid that there's anything wrong here. He comes to the Melech, and they open up the box. It's a gift, and it's full of sand. And the Melech obviously starts to get angry. But as soon as he saw that, Nochemish Gamzu said, Gamzu l'toiva. This is good. What's good? All of a sudden, Eliyahu Novi shows up on his side, and he tells the Melech, this is probably the sand that Avraham used against Kedor Laimah. And it turned into weapons, into soldiers, into whatever things is there. And he was able to defeat Kedor Laimah. So the Melech said, okay, I'll try it on my next battle, see what it is. Not too long after that, he has a battle with the Parthians. He tries it, and it works. So he returns, he fills up this box with better jewels probably than the Jews sent him. The Romans had a little bit better jewels than they did. And he was mevatel the decree and became the best friend the Jews had. Now, it could have been that simply he was afraid if they gave me this little box, what must they have in their back room? So Mele, it pays for us to be peaceful with them. Or kipshute, this was good. The reason it was good is there never was bad. You thought sand would be bad. It wasn't bad. The sand was the Yeshua. And not only that, we got our stones back. We have a friend we were kind of. The other way, if you would have bribed him, there was no raya that he would have accepted it. He would have accepted the bribe, that's for sure. But there's no guarantee that he would do what you wanted him to do. And therefore, and he wouldn't be your friend necessarily, because you did the normal things. But this way, it was good. It was better than it could have been. And then you say, Gamzu kol yovad ha'chamun l'tabavit. That's a story of Rabbi Akiva in the Gemara Brachos. That Rabbi Akiva once went to a town. He was asking for lodging, and nobody would give him a place to lodge. Had to go sleep in the forest on the hard, cold ground. He had with him his donkey, which he went riding on, his transportation, if you want to call it, his car. A big cat ate it up. So he lost his transportation, and he says, Kol di'avadachamon l'tavavit. He then had a rooster that was going to wake him up. For Vatikin, gets eaten up. Kol di'avadachamon l'tavavit. He wanted to learn that night. He had a candle, and the wind keeps blowing it out. Kol di'avadachamon l'tavavit. So that night he slept in the hard, cold ground. He didn't learn. I mean, I'm sure he learned, but he didn't learn what he wanted to learn. He lost his alarm clock. He lost his transportation. But he says, what happened? The next morning he comes into town, and the whole town was wiped out. They've gotten some gangsters or army came into the town and killed everybody. And if he would have been in one of the houses, he also would have been killed. So it's called the Yovad HaChaman L'Tavavit. God did good for him. There was no question about it. That he was saved from dying. But it was not good in the sense that he lost the mule, he lost his rooster, he didn't learn, and he slept in a hard, cold ground. So it was bad. But it was better than having it, than dying. That's something that we have to remember when things happen to us. that I'll give it in a mushal which is more understandable. A person loses his job. And the first thing, when the person loses his job is, oy vey, what am I going to do? And he's right. You got a problem. But if you look at it the right way, and he would say, Gamzul Taiva, this is good. What do I mean this is good? I have no job now. So first of all, it's the first time in 5 years that I've been working for this guy that I have a chance to relax. He was such a slave driver. I never had a chance to relax. Now, Baruch Hashem, I'll take it easy. I have money in the bank. I have nothing's really bothering me. I can take a vacation. I can go to Beis Medrash and learn finally. You get a chance to do it. That's what he does. Then, after about a couple of weeks, a friend of his comes over to him and says to him, I was always in competition with the other guy. I never wanted to offer you a job because you were working for him. I didn't want to steal employees. But now that you're not working for him, I'd like you to work for me. And I'll even pay you double to what he paid you. So in that case, losing the job was Gamzu L'Taiva. It was good. Now there are times when losing a job is not good. You had to work for 2 years, using up your account, your bank accounts. You have to cut down on many things. Okay, and then you say, "Kol di'av l'tav of it." Whatever God does, He does for good, because He definitely counts it against my yonshim. I don't have to suffer from many things because of that, and that's basically the inyan of the two. And I think it's important that we keep it in the proper perspective, that it lives a bracha for us, because we say Kol di'av l'tav of it in a time when you should have said Gamzu l'taiva. I don't want to say that you changed the gzeira a little, but it's called an inyan of something l'soten. What is it? Al tiftach pe l'soten. That obliges like that, like I said beer on myself. So you don't. It's better not to do that. If you say Kol Gamzu l'taiva, then you're safe. I say when it gets bad, chas v'chalil, it should ever get bad, at that point you say Kol l'tav of it. I think that's a basic idiom to remember. And so therefore, what is the name from Zocher here? Zocher, what they did to us. So remember, when do I want you to remember this? When God, what do you call it, left you peace from all your enemies. Would you say Amalek was my enemy? I would assume so. So Amalek is now gone from the world, right? So now remember, Timcha Zecha Amalek Tachas Hashemayim, not just wipe them out and the thing there. Remember to wipe them out, that the kfir of Amalek should not be here anymore, especially in you. That's the point that it has to be. And this, you saw it once ago, I think I mentioned it once before. I once got it when I was at Purim in Telz, and I approached Beli Meir, and I asked him, for Mekayim the mitzvah, Mechias Amalek, then we only have 612 mitzvahs. And we now, in the Torah, is supposed to be 613 mitzvahs, so it's not a yichus to be Mekayim to wipe out the mitzvah. She said it doesn't mean the nation itself. It's talking about the ideas of Amalek, and that's always around. And that's our job. So therefore, the third, 13 minutes, we're not interested in the people, we're not interested in killing them. That's God's business. What we're interested in is the kefirah that made in us. That's what we have to work on. Have a good Shabbos and Yeshua and a Feil Purim. I don't think we'll be beyond next week.